trying to hear it, like no matter what. No one's trying to hear it or hear. Wanted to cover this. It says African and Black history. It says Thomas Sankara was a revolutionary African leader. He drove out French imperialism from Burkina Faso and withdrew from IMF and made the country non-reliant on foreign aid. He was assassinated in a coup led by his close ally, Blaise Compaoré, supported by French imperialists. As far as African leadership goes, Thomas Sankara was cut from a different piece of cloth. Here are some of his accomplishments. Only 4 years in power, 1983 to 87. He vaccinated 2.5 million children against meningitis, yellow fever, and measles in a matter of weeks. He initiated a nationwide literacy campaign, increasing the literacy rate from 13% in 1983 to 73% in 1987. He planted over 10 million trees to prevent desertification. He built roads and railroads to tie the nation together without foreign aid. He appointed females to high government positions, encouraged them to work, recruited them into the military, and granted pregnancy leave during education. He outlawed female genital mutilation, forced marriages, and polygamy in support of women's rights. He sold off the government fleet of Mercedes cars and made the Renault 5 the cheapest car sold in Burkina Faso at that time, the official service car of the ministries. He reduced the salaries of all public servants, including his own, and forbade the use of government chauffeurs and first-class airline tickets. He redistributed land from the feudal landlords and gave it directly to the peasants. Wheat production rose in 3 years from 1,700 kilograms per hectare to 3,800 kilograms per hectare, making the country food self-sufficient. He opposed foreign aid, saying that he who feeds you controls you. He spoke in forums like the Organization of African Unity against continued neo-colonialism, colonialists, penetration of Africa through Western trade and finance. He called for a united front of African nations to repudiate their foreign debt. He argued that the poor and exploited did not have an obligation to repay money to the rich and exploiting. In Ouagadougou, Sankara converted the army's provisions store into a state-owned supermarket open to everyone, the first supermarket in the country. He forced civil servants to pay 1 month's salary to public projects. He refused to use the air conditioning in his office on the grounds that such luxury was not available to anyone but a handful of Burkinabés. As president, he lowered his salary to $450 a month and limited his possessions to a car, 4 bikes, 3 guitars, a fridge, and a broken freezer. A motorcyclist himself, he formed an all-woman motorcycle personal guard. He required public servants to wear a traditional tunic woven from Burkinabe cotton sewn by Burkinabe craftsmen. The reason being to rely upon local industry and identify rather than foreign industry and identity. When asked why he didn't want his portrait hung in public spaces, as was the norm for other African leaders, Sankara replied, "There are 7 million Thomas Sankaras." An accomplished guitarist, he wrote the new national anthem himself. So yeah, this is a reoccurring story. I can't the name I think of right away in reading this story is Patrice Lumumba, because his story is like exactly the same as this one. So, and then like this kind of thing happens over and over and over and over and over again, especially within these countries in Africa. Whenever the leader, they always say that African countries are full of corruption and like the leaders don't care about the people and all they care about is making money and exploiting the people. And that's the reason why African countries are backwards and they can't get out of poverty, and they can't become developed nations, and all of this is because the people just suck and they're just horrible and their leaders just horrible and they mess over their people. Da 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 da. That's the that is the what's the word I'm looking for? That's the narrative, okay? But it's totally not true. So, but what they tend to do is they make narratives true after the fact. Like it's not natural and organic how the information that comes out that supports these narratives aren't natural. They're not organic. They are manipulated and led into that situation. So, and especially whenever you have examples that go against the narrative, they are a problem. They are a big problem for the powers that be because it doesn't fit the story that they like everyone to believe to be true. So then they have to be dealt with immediately, quickly, and expeditiously, and to return things back to quote unquote the natural order, which is not natural at all. It's just the narrative, but they want to return things back to the narrative whenever you have someone that goes against it. So this guy here, along with Patrice Lumumba, along with many other names. I'm tired. I can't think of the names, but this guy was assassinated in a coup, and then the country went back to trash, afterwards. And that's what they want, it allows the private corporations to come in and exploit the people and take their resources, and it upholds the narrative that like basically Africans, black folks just can't get their shit together and that they suck, that they can't take care of themselves, they got to rely on the IMF or whatever, or some kind of aid. They always have to rely on aid to be able to survive, this kind of stuff. It's really sad to me, that people believe this stuff to be true, but it's not hard to understand why people believe it to be true because they continue to hear it over and over and over and over again. And then, you hear something so many times that you just can't help but to believe it to be true. It's like the stereotypes that you hear and then you see someone do it. And then you're like, well, those stereotypes must be true for all of those people or whatever, but it's not. And it's really sad. And then, so that the worst atrocity that you could do as a political leader, especially in an African country, but this is true in other places around the world, is actually look out for your people, and go against the narrative and shut the door to the international corporations, to shut the door to the IMF Bank and the World Bank, to not rely on any outside influences, and then flourish, to have the gall to be successful and actually care about your people. And, that is the worst thing that you can do, because you can see Venezuela is another example of that. Cuba is another example of that. You can keep going down the list, and that's what they did wrong. That's how they effed up, was looking out for their people and being successful with it and controlling their own resources and not allowing, especially like American corporations, to come in and exploit their resources, to not be corrupt. It's the worst thing to do. They're going to come in and they're going to kill you. Really sad. Let's read some tweet replies. It says, for anyone who wants to learn more about the dream of transforming Burkina Faso, Sankara's collected speeches is a great work. Another comment says, I read this book at age 13, a wonderful man. Another comment says, I'm from Eastern Europe, but Thomas Sankara has always been one of my heroes. What an absolute legend. Another comment says, same old story repeated to this day. That's what I'm saying. Hear this story way too much. It makes me sad. Like I got a tear can come to my eye. Let me read another one. It says, always an Uncle Tom that does their bidding, always. Whatever. Oh, they talking about the person who killed him because that's what happens too. Like every time, the Patrice Lumumba was that story. It's always they always get one of their own, one of your own people to betray you. It's like the story of Jesus and Judas. It's one of your own folks, and then they pay him so it's the money. The story of Judas. They gave him the money, and that's what sold out Jesus or whatever. So like you could say Patrice Lumumba was like Jesus, and you could say the same for this guy here, Thomas Sankara. He got sold out by one of his peoples, and that's what they do. They pay them, they give them money, and then they sell out the guy. And sometimes they actually be the ones who kill them. So sad. Another comment says, Uncle Tom was the hero. Actually, he refused to beat on the slaves when ordered. The name you're looking for is House Negro. Another comment, it says, Moray history, a brief but devastating struggle of the Biafran people during the split from Nigeria in 1967 is often forgotten by many. However, the world became aware of the magnitude of the crisis through powerful images depicting the manipulation and disease that claimed the lives of potentially millions. I don't want to go into that. Images will get me in trouble too. The House of UK Lords and their queens were responsible for the genocide in Biafra. History ignored it. No black person should forget. Another comment says, many true facts, but today's Africa indebted by China or helped by Wagner Group, not good as well. Africa belongs to the Africans, but no African country should belong to one individual and family and friends. It's very often the case